committed to... Okay, listen, we're going to tell you the whole thing. You won't get his live reaction because it just happened 3 seconds before we turned on the camera.
I can pretend that this is my first time hearing it.
Okay, but so yesterday we went grocery shopping because I had work and I was going to have to go grocery shopping late, and I can go grocery shopping by myself, but it's not the safest as a woman.
Yeah. And where?
They know where we are. No. Wow. Bleep it out. It's not the safest place. Sorry, it's not safe for women to walk around, especially in a urban area.
An
undisclosed urban. Urban's the right word.
Yeah, urban, but it's an urban.
I said an urban.
You said a urban.
An urban area. Undisclosed urban area. Anyway, so I asked them to go grocery shopping with me, and then by the time we got back to our campus where we live, he needed to get his groceries out of the trunk of my car, and so I let him get out, but then completely forgot that he needed to get the groceries out of the trunk of my car, so I kept driving, and then he thought it was a bit, and so we just kept it that way. And Josh was gonna try and explain it, but I was like, no, it's funnier if you just leave it, if he thinks that I did it on purpose, because if I didn't do it on purpose, it makes me look stupid.
I don't think it makes you look that stupid because it's something that I would do. And I can't think of myself as that stupid because otherwise, oh God, the bar's already so low. Any lower, there'd be some problems.
No, but I needed you to think that it was that I did a bit, that I did it funny. It wasn't just me being stupid. So that's what happened. And because I had to explain that to him, I ripped off all my nails. I only have my thumbs left.
But those are the most important ones. Those are the ones you get to jam into people when they make you mad.
Yeah, being a woman in an undisclosed urban area, you have to be able to gouge someone's eye out real easily.
Yeah, you mean if you don't have that going for you, honestly, you should be living in rural areas. Undisclosed rural areas.
Thank you. That was too specific.
I'm so sorry. I mean...
You're going to let them know where we are. It's like you just blurted out the city that we were in.
Oh, man. Took me a second to pick up.
The bits, they're flying. You can't even catch them.
This is Media for the Intellectually Impoverished. I'm Taylor.
I'm Randy.
And this is the podcast that
enriches your mediocre life.
I had a whole cold open planned. I had an idea. I had a great idea.
He wanted to talk about the games on his computer.
Yeah, but it would have been a funny thing.
Which one would you have rather listened to?
It was going to be funny because I blew way too much money on it, and you could have been laughing at my misfortune.
Oh, yeah, let's run that back. Let's go ahead and do it again.
Okay, well, if you insist. So I was on my new computer.
I just want you to feel the energy in the room. Did you feel that? Did you feel that that it was... Anyways, go ahead.
I don't think I would.
No, please. I genuinely... How much money did you spend on your games? I genuinely want to know.
Okay, well, let me preface this by there was a sale, but I bought so I own Kingdom Hearts on the PlayStation 3. It's my favorite game ever. And then when I got a PS4 that was not backwards compatible, I wanted to play Kingdom Hearts again. So I had to get Kingdom Hearts again. So I bought all of the Kingdom Hearts games again. And now that I have a computer that I can potentially use to play modded versions of Kingdom Hearts, I bought all of the Kingdom Hearts games again. As well as the Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate, because... Ooh. We've been doing that all the time. Whenever one of us insults someone, we just start, ooh. Ooh.
But not even good insults.
No, shitty insults. And that's what makes the worse the insult is, the funnier it is when we go, ooh. Can I ask you a
getting
question?
Late.
Ask you a question?
No.
Okay.
No, you see, let me explain comedy to you. So when I can't do it, it's
No,
too
go
late.
on.
No, please,
Go on.
please,
Go on.
I take it back. I take it back. I cannot explain comedy. I'm not comedian. I'm a peasant girl.
What are we talking about today, Randy?
It sounded like you had something else that you wanted to
That
talk
was what I
about.
was going to ask.
Okay, great.
I was going to ask
Thank
that
you for
question.
bringing us back on topic.
That's, I think out of the two of us, I'm the most on topic between us, and I think the records will state that.
I mean, I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
That was the perfect time. Anyways, I'm not bringing a bit from the last episode. That was last episode, guys. I know you heard it. I know you felt it. Anyways, today we are talking about character development. What a great segue. I've developed since the last episode.
It's almost like...
Nope. These are weekly. We're not gonna... What do you mean? Were you gonna go with a different bit?
I don't know what the bit was going to be. I was making it up as I went along.
Maybe if you would have looked at the script. Okay, we're talking about character development today. And like last week we talked about, or I briefly brought up Game of Thrones. I want to talk about Game of Thrones, but I will monopolize the conversation like I do with every episode.
I'm still... Keep going.
You know, like
I got a whole script to get through.
We're on one bar. You gotta change the camera. I can't pull off my last nail. I want to. Anyways, we're talking about character development.
Yes.
And I'm going to steamroll this conversation like I do in all episodes, right? Because that's what people do. They say, Randy, you steamroll Taylor too much. You need to stop doing that.
That's what I heard. In fact, I heard that from so many people that I started steamrolling again.
Exactly. No. So I'm gonna let Taylor take the lead, or like he can start, and then I'll come in and do what I always do and steamroll. You guys, they get it. They know.
Great.
They've
so
seen it.
I have some questions here. Let me pull up the script.
Oh, questions.
I'm sorry. The script bit is still good.
Was that last episode?
No, it was this episode and last episode. That's a callback to last
that's
episode.
So good. I am
on the point.
I was gonna say on the roll, but that's not how I lost it.
Good thing that was in the script and we're still That is not the correct notes. That is the correct notes. Look at all these questions.
1. There's a whopping 1.
No, so my questions are, so how do you, first off,
Wow. Just keep going.
How do you develop a character? Like, what does that actually mean? What does that entail? And then 2, what are some examples that you can give of well-developed characters? 3, is there space for non-developed characters? And 4, what are some tips and tricks for developing a character in story?
I didn't want to answer any of those. I just wanted to talk about Game of Thrones.
Game of what?
Oh, shit. Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
I'm sorry, guys. I threw a title out there that you did not know what I was talking about. I'm sorry. I've corrected myself. It is Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. Man, I don't know. You're just going to pose questions and have me answer them? Or are you going to talk about your thing? Didn't you have a thing?
But that's what you always do, is you pose questions to me and then I answer them. I wanted to try posing questions to you about something that you're good at.
Jesus. Okay. What was your first question?
I don't remember.
God damn it.
No, what is character development? And
no,
what is
don't keep going. That one question at a time. Or did those two questions have to do...
They kind of went together.
Okay,
It says, what is character development and what does it entail?
Okay. So, character development is shocking. Look, it's gonna be absolutely... Are you ready for this?
I'm not, actually. In fact, you should stop and we should end the episode here.
So, it's when a character... You're not gonna believe this. Develops.
Holy shit. Is that in the script? Oh my God, it is.
So it's when you have one character with this very specific archetype and very specific nuances to them, who then changes over the course of a show or over the course of a movie. I mean, you can see it with any kind of content. I mean, even like within a minute content, if you do it really well, you can see a character develop from one point to the other. But you can really see it in television shows because those take place over years and years. And so we've talked about it a bit before. I don't know if we've actually talked about character development. I know that I've talked about Friends and Big Bang Theory and how those characters developed. I don't know if that was the title of the episode and if that's what we're doing again.
Who cares?
I care greatly.
You shouldn't.
But now we're going to talk about Game of Thrones. So you have, and characters can go both ways. So you can start off with a really positive character who's very sunshiny and innocent, and by the end of the media have them very narcissistic, very very pessimistic towards the world, very like to themselves, and have like just a worse outlook on life. Or you could have go the other way. They have a terrible outlook on life, and by the end of the story, they have a great outlook on life. And you can do it with many things. The first one that comes to mind when you started asking about do characters need to stay the same, I thought of How I Met Your Mother and how Barney in that show never changed. I think I've mentioned it before. And I think I said that he does change, but it's not a great change. Like they give him a season of change. And then by the very last episode of the show, they throw it out. Or maybe not. Like second to last episode of the show, they throw it out. Anyway, so if you don't know anything about How I Met Your Mother, so the show, again, shocker here. It's about how this guy found his wife to his children. He's telling his children how he met their mother. And in it, there's a character, Barney, who's a very like hypersexualized character, and who's like all he does is he's a player. He's a pretty boy. He goes after the ladies, and that's like all he's known for. And so you'd think with that being his archetype and his main like character point personality, that by the end of it, he would change and settle down with somebody and get married or have children, have a family. Doesn't really happen. I mean, they kind of throw it in at the end that like, oh, now he has a child. And that's about all the character development we have. Sorry, spoiler alerts.
What?
He doesn't change much beyond that.
And that's interesting that you mentioned that, though, because that is a type of character. Like, I had to look up definitions. I wasn't checking the script, I swear.
Yes, you were.
I was trying
Listen, I told you to be off book by now. We've been planning this for a month.
I'm sorry. It's tough to find time to memorize lines. But yeah, so that's a type of character, and that's a foil who is the exact opposite of your main protagonist. So not necessarily an antagonist, but has the exact opposite qualities. So where Ted is very much, I want to find a woman, I want to settle down, I want to have a family. Barney is the exact opposite. I just want to sleep around. I just want to have sex with as many women as possible. And that contrast creates conflict, which can continue the story. And foils, I mean, they can develop alongside the character, but they don't have to. And so I think that it's style of character that fits within the narrative.
I was going to say that's very interesting because I actually think both of those characters don't really change over the course of the show. I don't think anybody really, I mean, they do change by the end of it. But again, it's very like last minute, and it's very, not so much, well, I'm thinking in the context of Game of Thrones because that's what I wanted to talk about, where you have like that show. I mean, you can talk about it. You've seen the first 8 episodes of it so far, and just the weight that show carries, and the conflict and the politics and the drama and the murder, everything that's in it is so heavy. And so when you're dealing with content like that, the changes have to be drastic.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking in that mindset of some of the characters that I want to talk about and where they start and where they end up. And then thinking back that, okay, characters in How I Met Your Mother then don't really change in comparison. I mean, they do, but in slower, gradual, and not as drastic.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it does have to do with the nature of the story, because I mean, How I Met Your Mother is a sitcom.
It's a comedy, yeah.
It's a situational comedy. What makes it funny is that these characters are this way. Whereas Game of Thrones is a narrative story, which happens over the course of, what is it, 8, 9 seasons?
Yeah. I thought you was gonna say years, and I was like, I don't know how many years it takes place. I think it takes like 2 years or something.
But yeah, so the story has longer to develop those characters, but also it's a heavier tone. So when you see a character shift, it's one, more noticeable, and two, it's just got more room than a situational comedy for that shift, because what's a situational comedy if they run out of situations?
Mm-hmm.
So,
which in sitcoms you can never do. You can never run out of situations.
It's in the name.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't run out of those.
You know, that's going off topic real quickly. I was thinking about how people do in. Okay, so you think about sitcoms. I'm sorry, I love sitcoms, and we'll get to Game of Thrones. I promise. But the sitcoms that we watch, or the sitcoms that I like, are older, and I think because they encapsulate that time period in which they were made so well. So you think about Boy Meets World, which was made in like the early 90s or even like the late 80s, and then you have Friends, which was made in the 90s, closer to the 2000s, and you have The Office, early 2000s. They encapsulate those time periods so well in the way that they were filmed and the stories that they were telling, that you see that sitcoms today, at least they don't grab my attention, or they come out as too cheesy. And I think that's because you have older generations trying to fit or trying to create stories in which they think the younger generations would like it, without the younger generations actually being the ones to create that media. Because the people who created Friends, actually, like, that story was based off of their life. That was their time spent in New York during that time period.
That's interesting that you say that. I think that's true, because think about, like, I mean, a lot of cinema, a lot of television right now is all old people. And it's not necessarily the people who live in these time periods. And so what they think of us.
Yeah. What they see through like our like cultural like zeitgeist or everything, like what they see through TikTok, how they view TikTok in like this cheesy like kid way, and like none of it makes sense. And so when we write stories, like none of it's really gonna make sense, so they're just doing wacky stuff because they're wacky and they're Gen Z. But everything we do like has a purpose, and to us is funny in its own way. Like, can you imagine if we like wrote a sitcom with all of the nuances that we talk about in like meme culture and in TikToks and YouTube? And I mean, in our like the way that we talk to each other is completely different than the way that older generations talk to each other. And so when they try to create something for us, it's like, no, that's not how we use that word actually. Like, we use it in this context.
I'm trying to think of an example of that, but I haven't picked up on any sitcoms at all.
No, because they're not like good anymore. I think the only one, and the one that's going around our friend group right now, is Abbott Elementary. Which I've not, again, I don't like following the trends, so I haven't watched it.
Like 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, when nobody wants to watch it anymore, then I'll binge it in 2 days. And I'll catch up and I'll be fine.
Somehow. I'll do it somehow.
Exactly. Anyway, sorry, did you want to say anything else about that topic?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, sorry. I thought that was interesting.
It is interesting.
I want to make a sitcom very badly. Anyways, Game of Thrones. I'm going to spoil some things for you. So first, I know it's going to be so good. It's going to be so good. Okay, I'm so excited. I'm not going to do any of the big spoilers. Like, no, there's some things. I think it's so funny. I'm sorry, I'm going off topic again. I swear I'll get there and I'll wrap it up quickly when I get there. I think it's so funny because it was my ex who introduced me into Game of Thrones, and then I like fell in love with it and continued watching it over and over again. And I can't believe that he just sat idly by and let me watch this show without giving me any spoilers. Because watching you and Josh watch it, it's so difficult to not tell you what's going to happen. It's crazy because it is not what you think it's going to happen. Anyways, it's so good.
To preface, I've never followed Game of Thrones at all. Like, I wouldn't say I've avoided it, but I think that my parents were just like, no Game of Thrones. No. And I was like, sure, whatever.
I will say that I actively avoided it for a long time because it has that culture around it that it is just sex and gore, but there's so much more to it than that. There's so much heart in it. Sorry. Anyways, okay, so we're going to talk about it. So if you don't know Game of Thrones, Game of Thrones, sorry. I got to be serious now, Taylor. I know we said it was a bit, but we got to be serious now.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Thank you. Anyways, Game of Thrones.
Think about other TV shows or movies we could do that with, and I thought the best one I could come up with was Breakfast Club.
Breakfast Club! It's so good. Okay, so Game of Thrones, it was based off of a series written by George R.R. Martin. The trilogy, it's not a trilogy, whatever you call a book series that's more than 3, called A Song of Ice and Fire. And so the show was developed off of that, and it tells the story of Westeros and what happens after their king dies, and then everyone in the Seven Kingdoms is trying to vie for power and who is the rightful heir, and the lengths that man would go to in order to find that power and that money and that love and lust and all of those kinds of things. It's such a human story. It's great. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'll stop. So I want to talk about a couple of characters, those that change, I think, the most throughout the show. And so I think it's so funny. We're going to talk about Sansa. So Sansa is one of the second to youngest daughter in House of Starks. And so Ned Stark is the dad, and you have...
and they're the good guys.
The good guys. You can't.
There's no good
There's
guys.
no good guys.
But these are the guys that I think that, especially in this, what I've watched, are the people we're supposed to be rooting for.
This is their story and how they survive this Game of Thrones. Exactly. And so Sansa, where we start off and what you've seen so far is her as this meek little child. I mean, you both, sorry, Josh is in here as well, have talked about how you hate her because she's
her so much.
So wimpy.
She's such a little pick-me girl.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, please, Mr. Prince Joffrey, please pick me over my sister. Please pick me. When is it going to be my turn to be the princess? Oh, please. Shut up. I hope she dies.
That's great.
Soon. I don't think she's gonna, now that you're bringing her up, but which makes me sad.
I told you that I'd only talk about people who survive, and from that, you'll know who survives Game of Thrones. Anyways, Sansa, so she is, and watching it again, she's very annoying, and she has no idea of politics and the wit that is taken or that is needed in order to survive, the lies that need to be told, the double crossing that needs to happen. She knows none of it. She is the most innocent and basic child there is. And that doesn't change. And I won't say what causes her to change because that is a big spoiler. But I think it's season 4 or season 5, something drastic happens where her entire personality shifts within the course of 3 or 4 episodes. And this is what I'm talking about, is there is such a drastic change as much as sitcoms, they do it slowly over situation after situation. In this show, as it is over the course of seasons, it is still a very concise story that I'm telling you only takes place probably over the course of 2 years or so. And so when this incident occurs, when this inciting incident happens, she is changed immediately. She has to learn that the world is a terrible place, is a scary place, and I need to wise up or I'm going to die. And those are the options. Either get good at it or die.
Get good or die, scrub.
No, that's literally what it is. And so by the end of it, you have her, I mean, she's gorgeous. You have her, the way that she's dressed as well at the beginning of the show is very much childish. And she's in these clothes that are long and princess and flowing. She's just the perfect, she has long, nice curly hair. And by the end of it, she always has her, she's fierce. And she has a crown that she wears and her clothes are always black and fitted and she's sophisticated. She is now the one calling the shots. And she is the one who's making all the decisions, having to usurp other people's power, having to be the one in charge because nobody's going to make these choices. She has learned that if I don't make these choices, nobody else is going to make them for me. I have been pushed around my entire life. I will no longer. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's good. That's a fun way to, tragedy is such a good way to develop your characters. It's so great. I love putting my characters through awful things.
That's all that happens in the show. This is just one awful thing after another, after another, after. Nothing good ever happens to these characters.
Because trauma is such a good force of character. I mean, awful thing to say, and hopefully no real person ever has to go through stuff like this. But for the purpose of narrative, trauma is a very, very powerful way to make your characters change instantaneously. I've used it in my stories. You have used it in your stories. It's just it's not like a cop out necessarily.
No, it's one of the easiest forms to use for character development.
But yeah, and it works and it works well, and it's good because if framed correctly, it can incite empathy for characters or animosity for characters. It's all about how you frame it, and that's just it's Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, I'm going to do this one differently. Instead of explaining how the character is now and explaining how the character is then, I'll explain the then, but I want you to explain the now to me. So I'm going to give you a character, and you tell me how you see them now. Sorry, he yawned.
I didn't.
If you didn't catch that,
No,
he tried to hide it, but it's not going to work on this scripted show.
I mean, let me pull up the script for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Taylor covers face and yawns off to his left, the audience's right. Randy brings it up and makes fun of him for it. Taylor pulls out the script and reads this part of the script.
Who's directing us?
God. God directs us.
You know what? You're right. You know what? And we're just going to move on.
Thank you guys so much for turning.
No, we're not. We're not.
Yeah, no. Give me a character.
Tyrion. You know who Tyrion is?
Which one is Tyrion?
Tyrion Lannister. The really short one.
Oh, Peter Dinklage.
Yeah.
I think he's
his character now.
He's brilliant. He's excellent wit.
Okay.
He's very, I wouldn't say manipulative as much as persuasive. At least not that from what I've seen. He's it's interesting because for the first time in the episode that we just watched, we've seen him timid, which seems completely out of character for him. It's when he's up with his father and they're talking about something. And it's the first time, because from what we've seen of him, he's he always has something witty to say, but then in front of his father, he does not. And that tells you something about the character. But yeah,
something about both characters.
Both characters, yeah. And yeah, so he's quick-witted, he's smart, he's not very battle-friendly, which is fair given his stature. He likes to sleep around. He's non-committal, I think is a good way to put it. But he's also got that weird, the Lannisters always repay their debts. So it's a weird dichotomy of character where it's I have to repay my debts, but also I don't want to commit to anything, which is really, really good. It's good writing.
All of it's good writing. It's a great show. Y'all should watch it.
But I'd like to praise the specific part. Yeah, I think I think if I had to nail down specific character points, it would be the wit, and the weird non-committalness, and his persuasiveness, I think would be the three main things.
Okay. So some of these are core. Like you're talking about, so persuasive, he'll always be persuasive. Wit, he'll always use his wit to get out of situations because he gets himself into a tight bind all the time. As for the not committal, and for the what was the first one that you said? Oh, you said as much as he's persuasive and intelligent, so from that I'm getting that he's not a fighter.
No.
If he was put into a fight, he'd not know what to do.
Yeah, and we've seen that he'd rather talk his way out of a fight than actually engage in combat.
That changes.
Interesting.
100% that changes. And the timidness that he feels with his dad, that changes.
Well, I'm sure that those two things have something to do with each other.
They do. And there's these very big, so for him, it takes a lot longer for you can see these moments from season to season as he develops. He has constant trauma that follows him. It isn't kind of like Sansa where she has one big aspect that completely 180s her personality, while Tyrion from season to season will have these little things affect him over and over again until he is forced to change. And so there is a situation that envelops with his dad, and he learns to stand up to him. And then he is not a fighter, but is constantly finding himself on the battleground and is, again, in a very serious way. Whereas Sansa had to meet this kind of emotional, I have to change the way that I am acting with the world around me in order to survive. Tyrion is on the battlefield and is I cannot. The war is happening around me. And it's either fight or die. And
that does happen. We see that initially when he's with Mrs. Stark. I forget her name. The lady of the House of Stark.
I'm sorry, I forgot her name too.
And they get ambushed by some people, and he's cut me. He's what use am I? Dead, right? So she cuts him loose, and then he has an option to run to the horses or save her, and he chooses to save her by killing the man with a shield, which is this first moment of it's a sympathy moment for us being like, he chose the right thing. That's the correct, quote, correct thing to do. But also because he was choosing, rather than to flee and get back home safely, he was choosing to willingly go to prison. So we see that, and it was like, he'd rather save a life than and go to prison than like just escape, and with that guilty conscience. Which is an interesting moment. And I think that you're right. Small moments like this that add up are another way to make your character develop. But eventually it has to be like, the straw that broke the camel's back. Something has to give that switch. And what gives that switch has to be obvious, right? So every other small thing can be like, it's a little sprinkle there, and a little sprinkle there. And we might not pick up on it until we see that final obvious, this is the thing that's going on that breaks the dam open. And then out comes the development.
And I think it's funny, you do see these moments, and that moment will play itself over again and again. So he has the option to, again, run or to fight in a very real sense. He also has this where you see all of the Lannisters at this point are very much family oriented. So you have, oh man, what's the bitch that I hate? What's Cersei? You see, all she cares about is her family, and especially her kids. And then you have Jaime, who only cares about his sister and his brother, and doesn't really, and his kids too. But everybody in this Lannister family, like, the biggest thing is a Lannister pays their debts, and a Lannister looks out for other Lannisters. Like, that is all you have. If you don't have family, you don't have anything. And you see how that affects each character differently, and the ways they go about keeping that motto and that in their lives. Whereas you see Tyrion eventually find out that, hey, my family isn't the best. And so I need to make a really hard decision about whether I'm going to keep supporting them, or if I'm going to think of the bigger picture and help the realm from what is wrong. And so you see that, again, this character like go from, I want to use the analogy of fighter and a lover, but that's not the right. He goes from like non-confrontational to being able to stand up in battle. And he goes from very like inner, like, he focused on himself and focused on his family to very much about like everybody around me. What I do impacts those around me. And I don't know if I necessarily like the way that I'm impacting other people.
And that's interesting because you mentioned that. And then now hearing that and seeing the way that he acts amongst the first whatever episodes I've watched, I can see that shift I can see that that's where that shift is headed. Writing is good.
See, that's why, and you were upset about me talking about character development, whereas like a lot of the time you can predict where a character is going.
See, but until you had said that, like, I had no idea, right? I just thought he was who he was. I mean, you can guess that characters will develop, but knowing exactly where they end up is different. But I think that's a really fun. I mean, because think about the one amongst the family, the one outlier, and it is the man who has been shat on from birth because he is a half man.
Yeah.
It's very smart.
Oh, I had a bit going earlier, and I don't remember what it was. I was supposed to bring it back. Damn it.
Yeah.
3 times
we can
the
check
charm.
the script.
You gonna look up the script? What was my bit again? Don't ever look at Taylor's phone. Don't. I'm going to tell you right now. If you find him on the street, please take the phone out of his pocket and chuck it. Just get rid of it. What is that? Okay, we're talking about Game of Thrones. Can you please pay attention and talk about Game of Thrones? I want to kill you. I wanted to bring up another character, and then I thought we didn't have enough time, so I wasn't going to.
No, we have enough time.
I know, but also I don't want to bring up another character now.
I can talk about a different thing.
Sure. Didn't sound like you had anything, but go ahead. I thought that's why you... Listen. No, listen. I didn't mean to be mean. Honestly, didn't mean to be mean. I set you up at the beginning... Rewind the tape. I set you up at the beginning to talk about your shit, and you declined. And so I thought the rest of the time was mine. And now you're going to come in and you're gonna usurp me, and you're gonna start talking about your shit.
It's all the Game of Thrones,
It's
baby.
all part of the Game of Thrones.
All part of the Game of Thrones.
Okay, go ahead.
Um,
See, you don't have nothing.
no, I do.
Okay.
It's not,
It's
as,
not
good.
as interesting
It's
as
not
Game
as
of
interesting
Thrones.
as Game of Thrones. Like, genuinely.
Game of Thrones is so good. I'm telling you out there, if you haven't watched it and you're not watching it because of the sex and the gore that's in it, trust me, I know it's bad. I'm watching it with two guys. I don't like it. But the story is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a really good story.
You are not, I can't get it into your skull that this is a great show. Absolutely. I mean, the juxtaposition at every single turn and every character and every plot line, it all works together and it's beautiful.
Phenomenal. I was going to talk about Phoenix Wright, which character development is weird because the Phoenix Wright is like it's called Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney. And so you play as a lawyer who defends clients he believes to be not guilty. And so it's like there's two sort of sections to it. There's the information gathering where you go and you interview all of the witnesses, you interview all the people that might be brought to stand, and you try to figure out what actually happened. And there's the actual trial room where you unravel the witnesses' lies to prove that your client was not guilty. And it's fun because, like, I mean, the character development is like it's like a microcosm of character development because you meet a witness and the witness will be like super cordial or something, and then you bring them onto the stand and you reveal their secrets, and then their whole thing is like they all have so over the top animations of them freaking out when you finally break down their lies and start like traveling down and telling the truth. And it's just fun to watch those twists happen, I think. And to see how the character changes from being this altogether sort of bellboy into this profusely sweating and like he wiped his eyebrows off with a rag or something. It's just stuff like that. It's ridiculous and it's over the top. There's one part where in one of the games someone brought a parrot to the witness stand and you're cross-examining a parrot over what the parrot's saying. And then the parrot like squawks and stuff. It's a ridiculous game. It's really fun though. The story is actually really fun. A lot of the mysteries are really good. But it's a game that you can't play. It has no replay value because it's always going to be the same ending.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, and unless you lose, in which case you get a different ending. But like the ending is you lose.
But I love games that have like so many different endings.
Yeah, but you can't have that all the time, especially in like a mystery game. You know, they're very. It's a newer thing to have mystery games have different endings with Until Dawn and the Dark Anthology
I've
stuff.
seen it. Yeah. I've seen it happen.
So yeah, it's just it's fun because you get to unravel them and you get to break them. But there's not. I mean, character development itself. There's really only one character that I've seen develop over the course of the games that I've played. I've played 2 out of the trilogy, or there's more than just 3, but the main 3, I've only played 2 out of those 3. And that's the antagonist ish of the first game is the prosecutor Miles Edgeworth, who throughout the process of the first game is against you. And trying to prove your client's guilty as a prosecutor does. And so his whole thing is like he has a perfect win streak. He had never lost until you, Phoenix Wright, come into the scene and start defending clients. And then he starts losing. And so he's like losing this sense of his perfection. So when we first meet him, he's very much like, I am the best. I'm the best prosecutor. I am the smartest. I'm better than you. It's like the sort of like entitled kind of character. But over the course of the game, after he's lost like, I don't know, 3 or 4 cases to you, he kind of like starts to dwindle and break down. And he's like, until finally in the final mission of the first Phoenix Wright game, he is the defendant. He is framed for murder and he actually pleads guilty. but you don't believe that as Phoenix Wright. And so you go and prove that he is in fact innocent.
Oh, interesting.
So you are defending him this entire time. And then through
Mhm.
that, you find out that they had like a past together, which is kind of still muddled. Like, I don't even think I think they knew each other as kids and then maybe went to different law schools, but also Phoenix is like, seeing you doing law made me want to do law. And I'm like, but didn't you know each other? Or it was weird. But yeah, so you see that development until finally he is framed for murder. He is framed to be no longer perfect. And because of the way that he feels about both the new prosecutor, the victim of the crime, and himself after losing so many of his battles, his perfect win streak, losing that, it instills this shift into him, and he becomes timid. He becomes quiet. He stops lashing out so much at Phoenix Wright, and it is a fundamentally different character than who we see for the majority of that first game. And then in the second game, he's gone. He's not the prosecutor anymore. He leaves. He goes on some long sojourn around the world. And for the most of the first game, or the second game rather, you think that he's dead. Like, they don't mention what happens, and every time someone tries to mention where Edgeworth went, Phoenix Wright shuts it down. And it's just, it's really fun because they're very gay. They're very gay for each other, but they won't admit it. It's very fun. But he's gone, and you don't see him at all. And you've got this new prosecutor who has this perfect win streak. Everyone has to have a perfect win streak, apparently. And now you're beating this new prosecutor, and blah, 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 blah. But then Edgeworth shows back up as this again, a different character, more sure of himself again, but less of an antagonist and more of a friend. And so that juxtaposition between the two Edgeworths that we see is super interesting to me as a writer, because you get to see this, like, because Phoenix Wright himself doesn't change. He's very much a foil in nature. Not a foil. He's very much a static character in nature, because he is always fighting for what's right. He's always going to protect those in need. Whereas his foil, who is the person that is fundamentally opposite from him, is the person who changes. And you don't see that often in narrative. You don't often see the protagonist staying the same the entire time, with the antagonist being the one who changes. And that's a really, really fun enemies to lovers trope that I like, that I think fits well within the narrative of Phoenix Wright.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No, I think it's interesting. I'm trying to nail down like what kind of like character development that is, because we kind of talked about like some like trauma or something drastic happening that can change a character, and then having little instances happen over time that ultimately change a character, and there is something that like breaks the camel's back. But then is there a different way in kind of like what you're describing that changes a character, in that it's just kind of coming to the realization that like having a new perspective, somebody like it is conflict, and it is like being defeated. I mean, because he's constantly being defeated by the Phoenix Wright,
Yeah,
the main
Phoenix
guy.
Wright.
But also, it also feels like he's coming to this realization on his own that like, oh, I'm not perfect, and like this, just realizing who he really is.
Yeah, and when you see him in the first game, when he's framed for murder, he's very depressed, super sad, and very, very melancholy, which is a complete contrast to the argumentative and the very obtuse and I know better than you kind. Like his main animation is tapping his forehead because he's like, I'm smarter than you. And it's a complete contrast from that character, and I think it's a bit of both of the first two, where it's like these small instances are adding up, but then this moment of trauma, this moment of realization that causes this paradigm shift for him. And it's just, oh, I mean, I just like it a lot. I think it's a very interesting character study.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it goes from enemies to lovers.
Enemies to lovers. I mean, they're not actually, I don't think they're canonically in love.
Oh, you said it like they were canonically in love.
No, everyone just knows that they are. It's inferred. It's very much a thing. They're not canonically like marrying each other or anything, but they have very homoerotic tensions. If you saw some of the dialogue, you would agree. You would agree.
Okay.
But yeah, let me pull up the script and see where.
Yeah. You You're forgetting. But who did we say our director was?
God.
Oh, damn it. Thought it was a funnier joke than that. That's what we need, is we need our director to shout our lines back at us. I would like the audience to know that he is in fact not looking at the script and is staring at, I don't know what that's called, a fried? Isn't it like some kind of like virtually fried meme? Of a car and says, oh yeah, this is definitely a 2002 Honda Civic moment.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything after that. So
did the writer just stop?
Yeah, I guess he just stopped. I guess we are supposed to come up with the rest.
It.
But yeah, I mean, character
what
development.
Does he expect us to do? Like riff off of each other or something? Like improv?
Character development is important in story. No one wants to be a part of a story where nobody changes and it's just the same people the entire time. I mean,
sitcoms. We literally just said that. You look at the script again? Well, it depends on the story that you're telling. So if you're telling, I think when it comes to telling a really to-heart story, a very human story, a very personal story, you're going to need conflict and you're going to need character development. I mean, that's what we do as people, is we develop. I think it's so funny, when I was in middle school, me and my friend, it's interesting how story has followed me everywhere, and go figure, our lives are stories. I mean, that's what we are, that's what we gravitate towards, that's what we implement, and that's what we create. But we've always used those terms to describe our life. So if somebody suddenly did something that was completely out of their character, out of their personality, somebody in the group would yell character development. And so I still use that in my life when people are going through a hard time. Think the character development. Think of it. Like this is your main character moment. You see it again in social media. This is we are the story. This is your main character moment. And so I think when you're telling really like two heartfelt human stories, like Game of Thrones, because that's what it is. I mean, it's humanity pushed to its limits, and how far would you go for family, fame, glory, money? And then you have like sitcoms, and both are equal in their own rights. That sitcoms don't need that heavy toll. I mean, you're supposed to go there for escapism, so you just want a laugh. And so in that, characters will stay relatively the same, because that's why you watch it. You watch it for those specific archetypes and those characters.
Yeah, you very, very well put. It's almost like someone wrote it out beforehand.
It's almost like I'm reading from a script or something.
Real quick. Thank you so much for joining us on this intellectual journey. And we zoom in. We'll catch you guys in the next one.
Bye.
That's a good script.
That was really good. Yeah. Like, I'm so glad that I wrote that out, because
you wrote it?
Yeah, I wrote it. Of course, I am God. Did you not know that? Couldn't do it.